Well, we got an off day today. We're going to talk a little bit about some maybe potential roster fluctuation here going forward. We're going to talk about the rest of the month of April, some prospects, the Royals preview, all today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Friday, April 26th, 2024. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more right now. New customers can get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Alrighty, welcome in, everybody. Happy Friday to all. Happy draft to the members of the city of Detroit and Metro Detroit. Very fun weekend for the city. We'll end the show by talking a little bit about that if we have time, but we'll talk plenty about the Royals series that is looming. Today, as you're listening to this, on Friday, we obviously kick off a 3-game set against the Kansas City Royals. Play during the day to avoid kind of draft overlap there. So kind of a rare Friday day game, but we'll talk all about that at the end of the show. Going to talk about some prospects a little bit. Kevin McGonigal back from injury. Max Clark doing better, which is good to say and good to see as well. We'll talk a little bit about the rest of the month of April. Not too much. We kind of talked on that yesterday. But a bulk of the show here, the first half at least of the show, is going to be talking about players that are struggling and if there is a pending move in response to the fact that each of these players are struggling. So we're going to start off with that. I want to kick it off by talking about position groups where I don't think there's going to be too much movement. Starting rotation, barring injury, this is your rotation for the foreseeable future, especially after Maeda's great start in his last time out in Tampa. But even outside of that, as we said, two Maeda starts ago, he was signed to a 2-year deal. They're not, and he has struggled every April his entire career. They're not just going to completely, punt on him a month into a 2-year deal. That was never going to happen. So unless there is an injury, this rotation is here to stay. As far as the bullpen goes, there's not really anyone that has been like terrible or that you're concerned about. Obviously, this bullpen has been the strength of this team up to this point. I think that's pretty fair to say. There's certainly a couple players who their last few outings haven't maybe been great, but as a whole, you look across the ERAs and the whips and even expected stats, whatever, you're not going to find too many weaknesses in the Detroit Tigers bullpen. So I think that those two groups we can just kind of eliminate off rip here for this conversation. But the offense is obviously going to be the main talking point behind really any conversation in regards to how the Detroit Tigers can improve. And that's been the case for a while now. Okay. So let's start off with someone who I also don't think is going anywhere anytime soon. And that is Spencer Torkelson. Look, I understand that he has been underperforming. He has. That is correct. I'm not telling you he hasn't been underperforming. I'm not telling you he's been good. He hasn't. Okay. He has 0 home runs. He might not hit his first home run until May, right? That is a problem. That is not good. His OPS is almost sub 600 at this point. But he's also not going anywhere. The game plan was for him to be the first baseman for this team. They are not going to completely eliminate that plan and toss it out 1 month into less than we're still at right now, 1 month into the season. It's not going to happen. Okay. I understand the frustration. I get it. I understand Keston Hiura has been hitting really well. Okay. He's not even on the 40-man. You may see him at some point this year, Keston Hiura, but he's not getting called up this early in the season unless there is a string of injuries or unless there's an injury at first base. He can also really only play first base. I know he's played some second and whatnot at the major league level, but not very well. I think they view him, he's only played first base in Toledo all season up to this point. Torkelson getting sent down, I'm, maybe can grow the confidence, maybe can get him to, what we say about Parker Meadows, like see himself just hit the ball, I guess. But like, this is a guy that had over 30 homers and over 90 RBIs last season at the major league level. He needs to get his timing down at the major league level. He needs to time up major league pitching. Him going down to Toledo, I'm not even sure would do too much of good. So he is not going anywhere. Okay. We can completely just throw that out the window. That's not happening. Okay. And at least anytime soon. That he would have to struggle for like a while for them to actually consider that. So we can move on from that conversation. Let's get into Parker Meadows, who I think is a lot more realistic of a conversation to potentially get sent down maybe at some point here in the near future. The tricky thing with the navigating Meadows is the fact that he is a pure center fielder and a really good one, right? And really good defensive center field is very valuable. But 400 OPS is not good enough to justify it, right? You can be a below league average hitter. You can't be the worst hitter we've ever seen, which if he did a 400 OPS over the course of a full season would be. So like there's obviously a line there, and he is well below it. So when talking about, who are you going to call up? Who else is going to play center field if it's not for Parker Meadows? Winfield Perez has played a lot of center field, especially this calendar year, which certainly helps. But nobody else really on the 40-man can play. Nobody else in the organization can play center field as well as Parker Meadows at the major league level. But there's no one really on the 40-man that's even remotely close to being a solid defensive center fielder. Now, the one thing to also keep in mind is because you have Matt Vierling and Winfield Perez, you don't, I guess, necessarily need somebody that can play like pure center field, right? Like you can patchwork that for a relatively solid amount of time. I don't think Winfield Perez and Matt Vierling are going to win you, like a pair of gold gloves out there. I don't think that's necessarily the best case scenario. I think Parker Meadows hitting is very clearly the best case scenario here. But assuming, again, that this is like, if there is to be a move on the horizon, or if they are running out of patience with his offense, I think that you don't necessarily have to find like, oh, we need a pure center fielder. And so if you're looking, again, looking on the 40-man roster, the players who are available to call up, you don't really have anyone that fits that mold anyway. The only outfielder even on there is Akil Baddoo. And Baddoo, fine corner outfielder, not going to play too much center field, right? So if you did that, you'd be adding to your outfield, but Matt Vierling and again, Winfield Perez would probably be your center fielders for the foreseeable future. So it's interesting. I think that that's certainly on the table. Baddoo hasn't been bad. He's got an OPS in high 700s, mid high 700s so far in AAA. A lot of people have pointed to his numbers against left-handed pitching. I think lefties at the major league are an entirely different level, but like it's at least something. So that's something to keep in mind for sure. Like Justin Henry Malloy has been okay. He's batting like 220, walking a boatload as he always does, but he's got like a 730 OPS, 735 OPS. Like he hasn't really been tearing the cover off the ball. And as we know, is not really going to be an everyday option defensively on top of that. So it's this interesting line. You really have to try and walk, it's a tightrope act. Like you really have to walk this line of, I look, again, Parker Meadows has not been hitting. That is objectively true. I think he should go down to Toledo relatively soon, even if you want to give it another week or two just to be sure. I think that makes sense. It's going to be a lot of Winfield Perez and Matt Vierling in center field, which are some question marks, right? But they both of them have been hitting significantly better, obviously, than Parker. You'll take your lumps defensively, and hopefully by June or July, you can have Parker Meadows back on the Detroit Tigers. That would be best case scenario if you were to send him down, that he figures it out, he makes his adjustments, and then he's back real soon, relatively soon, I guess. Okay. Let's keep the ball rolling. Got to talk about Colt Keith. We'll talk about the catchers. We'll talk Andy Ibanez and his injury return. We will do all of that right after this. Going to talk to you today about our friends over at DoorDash. This Mother's Day, get something helpful for mom on DoorDash. You can surprise her from wherever you are with fresh bouquets, the latest tech, gift cards, self-care treats, and more to make her day that much better. You can pair flowers with a gift card so she can celebrate any way she wants. Is she a bookworm? Well, you can try a bookstore gift card. Does she love a good latte? Get her a card from her favorite coffee shop. You really can't go wrong with DoorDash. So get all your Mother's Day gifts in one place. Get 50% off of your next order, up to $15 when you spend $15 or more on your next flour, convenience, grocery, or retail order now with code LOCKEDONMLB. That's LOCKEDONMLB, all one word. Order using DoorDash today. Terms apply. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 2 of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in as always, making us your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We will be back on Monday recapping the Kansas City Royals series. Also, be sure to check out Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day, bringing you the biggest stories without all of maybe the screaming that ESPN and Fox and what have you provide on a daily basis. So check it out for free. Again, subscribe to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or for free in the Amazon Fire TV channels app. So talking about some roster moves that may be right around the corner for the Detroit Tigers. Obviously have talked a lot about Parker Meadows lately, just on a game-to-game basis. That's where we started off this conversation. But I think that there's a few others as well. None of these are going to be surprises to anybody, but Colt Keith is someone who is often talked about in these conversations. The interesting thing about Colt Keith, especially with the Andy Ibanez injury, is that Ryan Kreidler and Eddie Leonard are also injured. And Leonard's not even on the 40-man roster yet. So, like, if you were to send down Colt Keith, you don't have a plethora of options really at your disposal to replace him in terms of other infielders, right? You've already called up Winfield Perez, who's even, been moved to the outfield this year, but was an infielder. And then obviously Buddy Kennedy now. So it's really, again, it's this fine line you have to walk. It's really easy to just look at someone struggling and be like, well, just send him down. Well, for who exactly, right? Like there's not a ton. And now when Ryan Kreidler hopefully gets healthy, then that will become a much, hotter conversation. Or when Eddie Leonard is healthy, that could become a much hotter conversation as well. But everyone's going to point to Jace Young. Not on the 40-man. I bring that because logistically you have to bring it up. But you could find room on this 40-man roster. This is not like the deepest 40-man in the league. You could easily find some room and some players, especially on the pitching side, to drop from your 40 to add Jace Young to it. So that's not too big of a deal to me, but it is worth bringing up. He has a 783 OPS. So sub 800 OPS, and his K rate is 31%. Now, that's high. That's striking out almost 1 out of every 3 plate appearances. That's really high, right? They're going to prioritize his development more than anything. I know. I want to see, the kids play. I want to see the top prospects up here, especially if they can help us at the major league level more than anybody. But he's got a 783 OPS and is striking out over 30% of the time. He's not coming up anytime soon. That's not happening. Unless just like a string of devastating injuries comes up in the next couple of weeks, knock on wood, hopefully that doesn't happen. He's not getting called up anytime soon. And honestly, I don't think he should. And I know that's not popular and people are going to get, upset just because everyone wants to see him. And he's showing the power. He's got a really good slug down there. All true. There's just let's see more. Let's have him actually be ready and not just call him up because, a different rookie that was struggling for 3 weeks in the season. Okay. So they're going to prioritize his development, I guess, is my point there. When Andy Ibanez comes back, that could make the Colt Keith situation a little easier. Like if you don't want to lose Zach McKinstry, who's out of options, and you want to keep Winfield Perez and you want to keep Buddy Kennedy, then you could see Andy Ibanez return Colt Keith, maybe sent down then. But McKinstry hasn't been good at the plate either, and that's something that we've talked about a lot. Man, it's really tough. But I'm not sure you're going to see too much movement on the Colt Keith front until one of those two guys in the minor leagues gets fully healthy again. I'm not sure that the flexibility is necessarily there. Again, you already have called up Buddy Kennedy. So it's really interesting. It's really interesting. But I don't think that you should be sending Colt Keith down anyway. This is a guy who it's not like he's striking out every single time he goes up there like Parker Meadows. And on top of that, this is a guy that at every level in the minors, I mean, genuinely, like single A, double A, triple A, struggled the first few weeks after getting called up, and then it just absolutely popped off. And so I think when he gets his timing down, he'll be fine. Obviously, the defense has been give and take. He's shown really good range, but is making a lot of errors. All of that is to be considered. But I don't think they're sending Colt Keith down anytime soon. I think that they're going to wait. If he has a 400 OPS 3 or 4 weeks from now, then maybe. But that's a conversation for then. I don't think that he's going down, tomorrow. Catchers haven't been hitting super well, either of them. Carson Kelly had a really good first week of the season, week and a half of the season. That's been kind of it. Jake Rogers, to his credit, has been hitting a lot better the last 2 or 3 games. That's a really small sample size, obviously. Look, Dylan Dingler's not getting called up anytime soon either. Man, is this whole episode just me saying like nothing's happening? That's not my intent at all, if that's how this is coming across. But like, the catchers are so important and work so much with the pitching staff. They're not gonna bring up a rookie and send down one of those two. Again, the biggest piece of context to keep in mind here is the fact that we are 3.5 weeks into the season. Right. I guess maybe we're pushing 4. Regardless, it's still very early. We're not even into May yet. So they're going to continue to give some of these people time. And if either of those guys has, again, a 500 OPS by mid or late May, then yes, the Dylan Dingler conversation, that seat will get a lot warmer. But at this point in the season, it's not going to happen. These guys work way too much with the pitchers and are way too important to the pitching staff as well. They're not just going to kick them to the curb because they've been struggling to start off the year. Okay. The other thing to consider here is Andy Ibanez's return. And we touched on that a little bit earlier in the show and yesterday, obviously. But I think that there's a chance McKinstry is cut when Ibanez comes back. Okay. But as we've discussed, there's not a ton of other infield options on your 40-man roster for infield. Right. So I also think that from that perspective, the organization is going to go, you know what? We want to hold on to the infield depth that we have. And McKinstry is going to get, I don't want to say let off the hook necessarily, but he's going to last a little bit longer. Now, I said it earlier in the week, and I'll say it again. If he's hitting this poorly the entire season, then he will not last the entire year. That is, I would be stunned if he looked the way he's looked at the plate so far this season and he just lasted the entire season. Okay. So I want to throw that out there. I'm not saying that he hasn't been struggling or that he's like this incredibly valuable asset or that he's going to make it, throughout the entire year. But I think, again, we're early and I know patience grows thin very quickly. But I do think that it is important to remember that we are still in April for some of these guys. And so with the Ibanez conversation, there's an argument for that. But I think there is also just the easier play of Buddy Kennedy or Wincio Perez. As good as they've looked, I mean, do we expect them to play that well the entire year? Buddy Kennedy had like an OPS over 4,000 until yesterday. Like, obviously, that's not going to last. So, like, where is his production level? Where is it actually? Even though, again, he's looked great. Wincio Perez has looked pretty darn comfortable in the box and gives you some positional versatility as well. I think one of the kind of dark horse conversations here is Eddie's Leonard, just because he isn't on the 40-man. So, like, in theory, you're not like back against the wall. Like, you have to find, a spot for him on the 40-man anytime soon necessarily. But, it's not like he has 2 or 3 options left either, right? Like, you're talking about a guy who is close to, again, close is relative. You maybe that conversation starts to creep in the back of your head of like, when are we going to find room for him on the 40-man roster. And maybe if he's doing well once he's healthy again, there could be maybe again, this is huge dark horse. I'm not saying this is going to happen. I'm not saying that I'm expecting this. This is like huge, very slim, maybe watch out under the radar type of conversation. That maybe there is a reality in which, you know what, McKinstry, we've run his course with him. We need some more infield depth on there. Leonard only has one minor league option remaining on his contract anyway. Let's just add him to the 40-man now, especially, again, if Ryan Kreidler's injury maybe keeps him out longer than they were initially expecting to. So something else to keep an eye out for. Let's keep the ball rolling. Only have a few more things to go over. Want to talk about Kevin McGonigal being back from injury and just kind of like rave about him for a hot second. Then we'll talk about the rest of April and the Kansas City Royals. All right, we'll do all of that right after this. Going to talk to you today about our friends over at FanDuel. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL, and baseball is also in full swing. FanDuel is your place to bet on every single game. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. You can bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. Also, the NFL draft, super fun in Detroit. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, everybody, welcome back. Your third and final segment of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in as always. So really quickly, just some other minor league player updates that I want to go over. Kevin McGonigal back from injury. I'll tell you what, man, that kid has one of the most beautiful swings I have ever seen. It is an actual thing. It is beautiful. It is gorgeous. It brings a legitimate tear to my eye watching him swing. That bat path, you know, people talk so much about bat path and keeping the bat in the zone for a long time, and that combined with bat speed, he's got it, man. That is an absolutely just beautiful stroke that he has. So good to see him back. I expect him to hit. I expect him to continue hitting like he's done pretty much his entire life. And honestly, it wouldn't shock me if he was in high A relatively soon. Max Clark, always a big topic of conversation. Started off slow. A lot of people talk a lot about Max Clark, the cleats, and like the chain. If you can play ball, I don't care. Like, good for you, man. Like, I don't, people get so pressed about it. Like, you can play ball. Welcome aboard, man. Somebody asked me about something a couple of weeks ago. I had a listener that was asking for, you know, just about like drama within like the Tigers, like circle and whatnot. And my response was just like, I only care about ball. Man, genuinely, I just care about ball at the end of the day. And he's been playing a lot better lately, which I want to give him credit for. He's hitting over 300 in his last, I want to say 10 games now. So he's been doing better. Hit his first homer, getting some more extra base hits. The biggest thing with him is like, hey, he's so young. Like, everybody take a deep breath when talking about his development. He's so young. And on top of that, like, he's been working on his mechanics a lot. Max Clark's swing has gone under a microscope since joining the organization. They've really been tweaking and tinkering with a lot of different stuff. So want to point that out as well. And he's been hitting well lately. So we'll keep an eye on that for sure. Rest of April, just really quickly, like, you have a chance to go over 500. This is an unbelievable stat. This kind of makes me sad. The last time the Tigers went over 500 in the month of April, take a guess. Just take a gander. Okay, you're close. 2016. You know how long ago? That's a long time. That's brutal. 2016. It's 8 years ago, which is wild. It makes me feel old. But like 2016, the last time you went over 500 in the month of April. You've gone exactly 500 a couple of times. You've been close a few times as well. Not all of those have been like catastrophic, terrible Aprils. The last time you went over 500 in the first month of the season was 2016, which you barely missed the postseason that year. That was right. You had a chance to make the postseason going into that last series of the season against the Atlanta Braves, who were absolutely atrocious. They were one of the worst teams in baseball, and you dropped 2 of 3. Jordan Zimmerman played in one of those games. I remember watching that from my college dorm room and being absolutely devastated. All of that to say, it's beautiful that you're not completely just like already out of it and the season's down the drain by the end of April. That's a great thing. Baby steps, right? The bar is on the floor, but we are above it currently, which is nice. The Royals this weekend, the 3 pitching matchups are going to be Reese Olson versus Seth Lugo, Brady Singer versus Casey Mize, and Michael Wacha versus Tarek Skubal. I mean, the Royals have been playing good ball. They're 15-10 on the season. They dropped, I think, 3 in a row over the weekend, but now have won the last 2. I'm actually recording this during the Royals Blue Jays game on Thursday, so I don't know. They're either going to be on a 3-game win streak or having won in 2 of their last 3, coming off of a loss when we play them. But either way, have recovered from that 3-game losing streak last weekend. I mean, look, these are pretty decent pitchers so far this season that you're going to be facing. And the Royals have the lowest runs against in the entire game of baseball, the entire sport, at the time of this recording at least, the lowest runs against. They've gotten really good production from their pitching. They went out and spent a pretty solid amount of money for the first time in a while, and a lot of that was in their rotation. Seth Lugo doesn't strike out people really at all, has like astronomically low strikeout numbers so far this season, but he is a huge pitch to soft contact and like barrel misser. We used to talk about this all the time when Erod was on the team, right? Like there's bat missers, there's embarrassing bat missers, there's bat missers, then there's barrel missers, and then there's you miss nothing, right? And you just get hit around the yard and get, the ball smoked off the bat. Seth Lugo misses a lot of barrels. He's got, cutter, sinker, straight fastball, slider, right? Like he just is, it's like how Erod kind of used to pitch. Like that's kind of a similar profile there, is just like consistently you're making contact, but you're missing the barrel of the bat, and has had a really solid start to the season so far this year. Brady Singer, I loved Brady Singer out of college, and 2 years ago, he was really good, had a pretty solid rookie year, and last year was awful. Like ERA over 5, just was completely ran into the ground, was a complete mess. So far this year, looks a lot better again, and he is a huge ground ball pitcher, like one of the biggest ground ball starters in our sport so far this season, and has been for the last couple of years. So going to have to work on lifting the ball, knowing what counts to attack on, and not just rolling everything over for 9 innings. Hopefully that is the case. And then Michael Wacha, really not too much to say here. This dude is just a consistent like 3.2 to 3.8 ERA year in and year out. Like he's going to get his sub 4 and he's going to go home and call it a day. So you're going to have to deal with a pro there. And again, that's obviously against Tarek Skubal. So yeah, like I said, the Royals been playing good ball. And this is early, a pretty, I don't want to make it sound like it's like the biggest series in the world and you have to win or else it's the season's over. But this is a pretty big series for somebody, facing a team who is also right at the top, in the top 3 of the American League Central. They've gotten off to a hot start. People are kind of riding them high. They've got a lot of momentum. You're playing them at home, which is usually a good thing. But guess what? The Tigers are 4-7 at home and the greatest road team ever. So that's something, but just take advantage. Take advantage of, you're going to go, again, Olson, Mize, Skubal is a really fun 3-headed monster. I think you should win every time Tarek Skubal is on the bump. I don't think that the Royals are like 90 win good. They're certainly better than they were last year, but this is a team that lost over 100 games last year. I don't think they're that much better. And I think this is kind of just the product of a really hot start. So be the reason they come down to earth. Take advantage. I'm not asking for a sweep or anything, but I think you should win this series. Again, anytime when Skubal's on the bump, that should be 1, and you just got to split one of the other 2. I that's kind of my mindset at this point with how well Skubal has looked this season. Okay? Happy draft to everybody. Hopefully everyone stays safe, has a great time. I'm actually about to head out. I have a lot of friends and whatnot over in the living room of my apartment. So if I'm talking quieter than normal, you know why. But about to head out that way. And yeah, it's going to be a really, really fun weekend in the city of Detroit. Like I said, a day game on Friday for the Detroit Tigers because of the NFL draft. So a 1 o'clock start time on Friday, and then a 6 o'clock on Saturday, and then back to a 1:40, obviously, for Sunday baseball. Okay, cool. Thanks for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. Appreciate you all greatly for tuning in, and we'll be back on Monday recapping this series against the Kansas City Royals. Go take 2 of 3. Go have a fun weekend, Detroit. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. I'll catch you all then, baby. Go Tigers.